Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Jason with Jadren Aquatics. Hope you guys are having an awesome Labor Day. I just want to thank all you guys out there who have labored so diligently for this country. Oh yeah, that's Memorial Day. Sorry, Labor Day. What is Labor Day anyway? Celebrating labor or just getting a day off from labor? I don't know, I never really thought about it before. All right, so what are we talking about today? We're talking about automatic water changes. So I thought I would create a video giving you guys a lot more detail into the automatic water change system. Now, this is the system that I use. There's a whole lot of other different ways to do it. Some people like one way, some people like another way. So this is simply Jason's way. That's it. If you don't like it, I'd love for you to use your way. Or perhaps, maybe you can tell me a better way that I can do it. So, so this part, we're just going to deal with the drip system part of it. The next video I'll create will deal with the way that I handle the overflow or the wastewater. Okay, so the first thing you got to decide is what type of pump are you going to use. So so the whole system that I use is a drip system, and that is just a slow drip into each tank. And so that after a while, after it gets up to the top, because of the overflows that I've built or the bulkheads that I've put into each one of the tanks, when it reaches a certain level of the tank, it then runs out and runs down into the drain. So this dripping needs to be in somewhat of a controlled environment so that you know how much you're dripping into each one of your tanks. So I have 50 something tanks. So if I just had simple hose going to each one of the tanks, the tank that's closest to the pump is going to get more water than the one that's farthest from the pump, because there's going to be a lot more pressure on this end and than this far end. So what you have to do is you've got to find something that will control that pressure so that you're getting whatever the equal amounts that you want to put in each one of your aquariums. Now, the amount of water that you change each day is obviously completely up to you. Right now, that decision with me is made simply because of the container that I have. I have a 150-gallon container, and so I don't want to have to fill that thing every single day. So right now, I kind of have it set so that it's filling every 3 days. So I think, if I figured right, that I'm changing about a gallon a day, at least into each one of the 10-gallon tanks, and 2 gallons for the 20s and 4 gallons for the 40s. So that means in 10 days, in theory, you've done a complete water change. Now, obviously, that's not exactly how it works because you're not dripping in there constantly. I have it set up right now where my drip system is set up on, first of all, I like to use a digital timer, because some of the other ones that you have, you can only set it in like 30-minute increments, the little things that you push up and down on the timers. With the digital, you can set it to run 1 minute at a time if you want to. And so I have it set, well, first of all, I had it set to go off 4 times a day for 15 minutes a day. I had it going off at midnight, at 6, at 12 in the afternoon, and then 6 in the afternoon every single day. And used to, we'll talk about it some more, I use this pump, and this pump is extremely quiet. Well, I finally got so many tanks that this pump wasn't strong enough anymore. So I bought a bigger pump, and that other pump is much louder. I mean, this sucker it's a bit loud, and I have it mounted on a wall, and that wall is the wall to my youngest son's bedroom. And I had no idea how much it would shake it. Well, one of the times it went off, I think at 6 o'clock in the morning, it woke him up, because that's way before he ever gets up. And he thought literally there was an airplane that was flying over and was hovering right over the house for 15 minutes. So he's looking at his window trying to find this airplane, and it's not an airplane, it's this pump. So I changed the settings on the pump, and I have it now going off at 6 in the afternoon for 30 minutes and 11 o'clock at night for 30 minutes. So I'm still getting the same amount of time, but it's not going off when he's in his bedroom. And part of the reason I have it broken up is because the container that I have is out in the garage, so it's subject to the heat, so that water gets 90-something degrees, especially right now. So I don't want it dripping a whole bunch of that water and changing the temperature of the tank constantly. So let's talk about pumps first of all. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can do this. You can use some of just the normal water pumps that just pump water right out of some type of reservoir. The pump of choice that I use is a diaphragm pump. Now, this kind of happened to me by accident. So I used to have chameleons, and this is a pump that I bought that is specifically designed. It's called Miss King. It's got a picture of a frog on there, but it's also used for like poison dart frogs and other tropical frogs that need mist. So this powers a misting system. So it works on the principle where you have the inlet here has a simple, this 1/4 inch tubing that goes down into a reservoir, and then it pulls from it and then outputs it out this side. It's kind of a slow process the way that this works because it doesn't pump a tremendous amount. But it does a perfect job, and it kind of surprised me because this one is only designed to handle, I think, 5 misting heads. So I thought to myself, how many drippers would this thing actually push? And I think I got it up to almost 40 before the farthest one from the pump no longer was pumping. So I decided I went ahead and got the bigger one, and now I just keep this one as a backup in case something else happens. So this pump right here, this pump, it's a 75 PSI pump, and it pumps, let's see, I wrote myself some notes here so I remember. This one pumps 0.55 liters per minute. When I bought this system, it came with the misting heads and stuff. It was like $150 or something like that. The pump that I bought off of Amazon, now remember, all this stuff I'll link down below so you guys can see exactly what it is. The pump that I bought on Amazon, it is a 160 PSI pump, and it pumps 7 liters per minute. So in the numbers that you're looking at, it seems to pump about 14 times as much, but when I actually tested it, it seemed to be pumping about 7 times as much as this pump. And the new pump that I bought was only $54. Now, it's a Chinese-made pump. It had good reviews, but there are problems with it. And what happens is, as these diaphragm pumps run, they when the pressure builds up in the hose, it will shut itself on and off a bunch of times to keep that pressure from getting too much. Okay? So, since I only run it for, like I said, about 30 minutes now, and I have it hooked up so many outlets, it doesn't seem to shut off any. So I think just due to the fact that I'm only running the pump for an hour a day, I don't think I'll have any kind of problems with it. I think it should last for a long time. These pumps, there's a whole bunch of them. It was a little bit overwhelming at first to figure out exactly what pump that I needed. This pump already has the outlets that are designed for this 1/4 inch tubing. The one I bought didn't, but I was able to quickly find an adapter at Lowe's to get it down to this, so that wasn't very difficult. So I didn't really know when it came in what I was going to do. I was just going to figure it out as it came. So either way, it worked out. It worked out fantastic. The other reason that I love these diaphragm pumps, other than other pumps, is they can run dry and it's no problem whatsoever. So there's almost every single time after 3 days, I forget to fill it up, and this thing runs dry. And it doesn't affect it whatsoever when it runs dry. So that's why I use this one. Instead of using the normal, just the standard water pumps that don't like to run dry whatsoever, and it typically ruins those once it runs completely dry. Okay, so this does not belong up here. This is something that my granddaughter was up here with me last night playing with. That is a toy from a restaurant, and we don't need that in what we're doing right now. Okay, so the next thing we have is, let's go over this hose again. So this is 1/4 inch hose, and it's kind of a rigid type hose. This is the hose that's most commonly used for 2 things. One of them is your water line in the back that goes to your ice maker. If it's not brass, they typically use this. This stuff can handle quite a bit of pressure. And then it's also used for RO units. So a lot of the stuff that I'm using, you'll find it in 2 different places, whether it's for water lines or whether it's specifically for RO units. This stuff is cheap as can be. Again, it's 1/4 inch. And then the connectors that I use, these are 1/4 inch quick disconnects. The way these things work, they give you these little blue things that pop off. And so you simply just take the hose and you press it in there, and it snaps into place so that you cannot pull it apart. And then if you want to, you don't have to use these things, but you can snap these blue things back on there, and it'll keep it in case it builds up too much pressure and pops off. And then the way you get these things apart is you've got this little piece that sticks out. You simply kind of take your fingernail, press down on it, and then this thing simply pops back up. These things work absolutely fantastic. The only ones that I use the elbows, the 90-degree elbows, and then I also use the three-way tees. I've got, out of all of these, there's probably close to 100 of these now that are all hooked up. And the only time I've ever had any problems, I had one that I had, no, two. I've had two that I didn't have pressed in all the way and they were leaking. So simply I had to take it, push it back in, no problems whatsoever. So these things are great. And these things, I don't buy these things at Lowe's or Home Depot. They are expensive. But if you get online, again, I'll link them down below. I bought these on Amazon. You buy them at like 10 at a time and they're like 70 cents each. So again, tees and elbows are the only things that I'm using in these. Okay, so now we get to the point we have to determine how much we want to drip in each aquarium and how we're going to control that drip. So these right here are called button drippers. These button drippers are designed for landscape. They're designed to hook up to landscape hose, and people will put them like over a certain plant or a certain tree so that when they turn it on, they know that it only drips so much. And so this one right here, if you look, it drips 1 gallon per hour. And then if you look at this one drips at 2 gallons per hour. And I think there's a 4, a 5, and maybe a 10 also. These things, you get about 20, these are 25 in a pack, and I think these are like $5 or $6. These things are super cheap. And each one of them is color coded too, in case, you know, you want to know that. And so, you're probably asking, why do you have some 2 gallons and why do you have some 1 gallons? So the 1 gallon per hour I use on the 10 gallon tanks. The 2 gallon per hour I use on the 20 gallon tanks. And then I use 2 of the 2 gallon per hour, so I have 2 lines that go into the 40 gallon breeders so that they're all dripping the same amount. Now, one thing that you need to know is that just because this says it only drips 2 gallons per hour does not mean it's going to drip 2 gallons per hour. That's based upon if this thing has the maximum amount of pressure on it, which I have no idea what that amount is. So I like to take these after I get the whole system set up and drip it into a cup and then see exactly how much is actually in there. Okay, so I want to show you kind of how I typically do this. So we got our hose here, and I'm using scissors, but they make a device that you cut this stuff with that I keep meaning to buy and I keep forgetting, because what happens is when you take these scissors and you cut it down, you're crimping it a little bit. And if you crimp it too much, it won't seal inside of these quick disconnects. I haven't had a problem with it before, but I know that it can be a problem. And so we'll take a kind of a for instance for each aquarium. So we have this coming over the aquarium. Each one of these has one coming over the aquarium. So you got this side coming in, you got the water that's coming in this side, then we'll take another one, and then this one would be the one going out, and then let's say this is the last aquarium on the end. Instead of putting a T, we'll put an elbow here. Okay, let's pull off these blue things. Okay, so pretend we got an aquarium here and we got an aquarium here, and then we'll take this, and depending on how far, I typically have this attached up on my rack. So if the aquarium is about right here, I'll have to cut this long enough to get it down so that it goes actually into the aquarium. This stuff's like is kept in a circle, so it wants to roll on you all the time. Okay, so this one is the one going down into the aquarium. Push it in like that, and then you take one of these drippers. You use the non-colored side. That's the top. You press that in like that, And if you wanted to, you could simply leave it like that if you've got some way that you kind of mount it. I've cut grooves into the back of my, or into the top, not to the top, the tops that I've created. I've cut these grooves so it just sits right in it. But I like the water to go down deeper into the tank, okay? So what I do is I cut another one, say about this long, and then I attach it to the dripper in it like that, okay? And then you would create this exact same thing over here for this other tank. So this way, this water is dripping, but it's dripping down deeper into the tank instead of just, you know, just dripping. The reason that is because let's say the drain is right over here. The deeper that you get this thing to release water, the less likely that fresh water is to come over here. It's going to press it in here, this water is going to rise, and the older water is going to go out. Now, of course, some of the good water is going to go out, but you got to be careful too, because the deeper that you put this thing, the more pressure that it takes to put it into the tank, so that can cause a problem also. The other problem that you run into with this, doing it this way, is you can get the water to backflow on you, depending on where your pump is. So at one time, what I did is I took this little piece right here, and I would take a pair of sharp scissors and I would poke a little hole in here. The reason that I did that is so that when this thing shuts off and the water starts to try to run back up it, it sucks in air and breaks that siphon. And that worked good with this pump. When I put the new pump on, everywhere that I had those little slits, it was shooting out in like a misting stream because it had so much more pressure on it. So what I did instead to break that siphon is I mounted the pump up higher than any of the tanks, like this, and then when the hose came out of it, let's say like this, I then took the hose and I wrapped the hose up higher so that it was about 2 foot higher than any of the tanks. That way it couldn't create any kind of siphon because this part of the hose was so high before it came back down. So this way, just it's really worked well for me. Now let's say like for the 40 gallons. So the 40 gallon ones, and man, when these things get on, they stay on. And another reason that's really good to use these quick disconnects, you can buy just those barbed ones that are T's that they just jam up in there and they hold on pretty well, but those won't handle as much pressure as these will. These like just will not come off whatsoever. So let's just undo that. So if you want one that's going to go to multiple tanks, so instead of having this here, you put this here, you put another T here, and then you take some shorter pieces, or as long as you want them to be. Just depends on how spread out you want them to be. You put those there. Now you take an elbow, like so, and then you hook this piece into there like that, and then you hook another one on this side. And this way now you have it dripping with two of them into one. Or again, if you wanted to buy the bigger ones, the ones that let's say do 4 gallons per hour, then you'd only have to use one of them instead of this whole contraption, which would be way cheaper than having to do it this way. So you've got the choice on how you want to do this. You could do this in an entire loop around. If you're trying to do it around your whole fish room, you could do it in an entire loop. But what I've decided to do, when it gets to the end of each one of the tanks, I have it where it just hits an elbow instead of another T, so that line is done. So if I have 3 rows of tanks, I have it just like this, where it is has an elbow at each end so that it stops. And then whenever I want to add on to it, then all I have to do is simply remove one of these, put a T on it if I need it to keep on going that way because I've added some more tanks. So it's real easy to manipulate this thing into adding on more and more to it. It's just, like I said, it's just a very easy way, and it's pretty cheap to do it this way also. So I hope I helped you guys. I hope I gave you maybe some ideas on how you can create your own automatic water change system. It just makes things so much easier. I know when you first start out, it doesn't seem like it's going to be that much work, but you realize there are so many other things that you need to get done in your fish room, and water changes typically be the first thing that you let slide. And that's just something that you've got to stay on a good regimen if you want to keep your fish absolutely healthy. So if you guys have any comments, any questions, be sure and leave any comments down below. Love to communicate with you guys. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, I'd appreciate you guys if you'd hit that subscribe button. Thanks again, guys. I hope you have a safe and blessed Labor Day. Thanks, and God bless.